next item is 9D. It's a discussion of board ad hoc committees and approval of appointments for board ad hoc committees and director assignments. Again, I'll lead this, and I want to start it with, again, I put it in these categories because if it's the board's pleasure to have standing committees, they would fit into certain kinds of committee. You're missing? When I first, I listened to what the community said about standing committees, and I first started from the standpoint of saying, maybe we ought to have standing committees. And I remember Catherine Hyde indicated that it was only money. And that, to some extent, is 90% of it. But there's also staff time, commitments, and things like that, that if we go to standing committees, and we can go to standing committees if it's the board's pleasure, but we probably have to look at adding staff because we find ourselves in a situation of having to schedule meeting locations. We no longer have the conference room area up at the offices, so we're in conflict and meeting schedules, multiple postings that are required. You have to keep track of that. You have to keep track of specific minutes, and all of those things that relate around the Brown Act that require a very specific procedural way to do it. None of us particularly want to do that as individual board members, and so we'd probably have to be prepared to have some form of staff assistance. So I looked at that, and then I said, well, let's take a look at these goals again, because if you walk back through the goals of cooperating with the Army Corps of Engineers to complete environmental review, that is really, as you described it earlier, Director D'Amico, an ongoing thing in which the staff is working with them all the time, and what we need to know is where it's at and whether they need anything from the board. So I started to look at saying the board can be a committee of the whole, and therefore you would be meeting all of the requirements of a standing committee. It'd be posted. Everybody would know what the discussion is going to be. Everybody would be able to communicate and be part of it. Also, the environmental review on Stewart Street and Rodeo Grounds. Again, those are projects that are way into the process and don't need policy determination by a committee working to try to develop policy, but need again the review of the board knowing that those things are happening. So again, that's one where it can be a committee of the whole, and so that every month we're getting a report on that, and it's a discussion item that could be discussed. The public can make input into it, or we can not, we can just pass on it. On the SCADA, this is one where I suggest we have an ad hoc committee of very short duration, 3 to 6 months, and the reason I'm suggesting an ad hoc committee is that this is a technical project, and I don't necessarily want to take the board's time as a whole to re-educate me and everybody else on all the intricacies of SCADA. I just want to know whether it makes sense. Is it a good investment? And if it is, I'm going to rely on people that I think have some expertise in it. So I was suggesting we do have two members of our board, Director D'Amico and Director Beringer, who are familiar with that system. They wouldn't have to be trained. They can sit with the staff and decide what makes best, and I am more than willing to accept their deal. Again, I suggest that as an ad hoc committee because the purpose of that is to determine some technical items and going through all the posting, going through all the public comment, all of that kind of thing, probably doesn't make sense, and when it comes back to the board, public still has the ability to comment on it. The lifting of the water moratorium, again, is more of a legal research and a research of by the staff to bring to this board as a whole to decide whether we're going to make a decision relative to the deal. So 3 out of the 4 of these are not necessarily ad hoc committees, they're committees of the whole. Now, when you get to like the review and revise district fee schedule, I'm again suggesting an ad hoc committee because it's a very specific task. It can be done in a very specific, should be able to be done in a very specific period of time. But in addition, an ad hoc committee can hold public meetings. And so from the standpoint of revising the district fee schedule, there's some stakeholders who may want to make presentations and may want to have input within. They're not members of the committee, but they can. The committee can hold a public workshop or public, and would be encouraged to do that. When you get to like developing a policy for future employee salary and benefit programs, again, it's a policy development thing, a very specific task, can be done in a reasonable period of time, and again can hold a public workshop to discuss those things. I guess I should give you my opinion as to why I would suggest the directors that are on here. The fee schedule one, I suggested Vice President McKinnon and Director Thompson. Just from the standpoint of Director Thompson getting an understanding of all those things and getting involved as a new person, and Vice President McKinnon from the standpoint of being part of this of the leadership team that will probably move on next year, where a lot of these things will become reality. The procedure being developed this year will probably become reality in the next year. And that's the same reason for the employee salary and benefit program of putting Vice President McKinnon and Director D'Amico on, because I would assume that they would be probably in the leadership roles in the year in which you'd be implementing the policy which is being developed this year. And so them having the primary development responsibility, they would then probably be in the position of being involved in negotiations and things, which would be the ultimate implementation of that policy.
You're assuming our tenure goes into next year versus we're both killed with just 2 items. I just had one question on the legal definition of workshop. I feel that the Brown Act does a disservice to public organizations. Committees are crucial for any business to operate. But the microphone and 3 minutes and just the world at their disposal as far as what they talk about is very dysfunctional. Can the workshops be limited to interested parties to a finite number? For instance, can you have 8 folks and still call it a workshop and have them from across the community versus?
I doubt that you could hand select who attends.
No.
I do not want. I would not want that. I would not call that a, Now,
Just a question I have.
It's
for efficiency.
It would be. I know it's efficient, but I think the combination of a hybrid committee, which is ad hoc for you and the committee members to get basic information, deal with the staff, get a position, get some ideas, and then go with the public. Granted, you may get some comments and things that are off the wall. Anybody gets 3 minutes to insult you.
Used to that.
That's part of called democracy. And so, but I think the hybrid ad hoc committee would solve the economic problems, and the public workshop would still be posted. Minutes, all of it. No minutes on it.
Not necessary to workshop, and as David just we're tag teaming here. We've done many workshops here, and they're not even set up this way because you're not sitting at the dais as a board.
Right.
Whoever your committee members are, they can sit there and they run the workshop. So that's why there's no minutes, and they can.
I think it would be within the discretion. It would be within the discretion of the board to decide how it wants to structure something like that, or the subcommittee, if it's an ad hoc subcommittee, of course, is not subject to the Brown Act. They could certainly choose to meet with a smaller group of people that they invite. At the same time, if the board's direction is to have a public workshop, that the ad hoc committee get that broader input, that's a discretionary call of the board.
But I think we can have this blended committee that can meet both the needs of the public and meet the needs of where we don't have to add staff to be clerk to the subcommittees.
I was going to ask counsel, what are the requirements of an ad hoc committee? Do they have to report their results?
There really aren't any requirements other than an ad hoc committee is not a standing committee, does not have continuing subject matter jurisdiction, is typically for a limited term, for specific task, that kind of thing.
Right, once completed, would come to the board anyway.
Specific tasks, limited time, and eliminated when it's completed its report.
And really no jurisdiction. The jurisdiction comes from the board. We just would make recommendations.
Right.
Good.
Now, like the one, develop organization transition plan for district, that's being an ad hoc committee, and I didn't include in that the recommendation for a public workshop, because you're dealing with some privacy issues of employees who may want to retire, may not want to retire, may not tell us the information so that we can plan ahead. Because they might think, well, gee, if I tell them I'm thinking about retiring, then they're going to do something to me. So there's kind of an employee personnel problem there too. And I would think any of the ad hoc committees, if they felt a need for public information or for specific information, could call a public meeting or invite specific people. Is that correct, David? Okay. Anyhow, that's I've listed some people here. Also, the third category was kind of a liaison positions, which we've traditionally had. And Director Thompson from his experience with the Pros Commission, and Director Berenger with his experience with the NCAC, I would recommend they hold those positions. Any discussion?
Could we just make
Review and development of procedures for all CCSD facilities. A general review of what are we going to do about this facility, parks facilities. You might come up with recommendations that have to do with the facilities of parking lots and restrooms that we have that may be dealt with in a different way than we're dealing with.
Right. Well, this one I think would really serve itself to have a workshop, a public workshop, where you could invite folks with specific experience in these various areas, then also have input from the public on their views on it. And I think it would really lend itself to a more formal workshop session.
I think by agreement the committee would have that opportunity.
So do I just move, I would move?
Well, I've got a couple of
Okay.
requests to speak, so, I got one request to speak. Amanda Rice? No, wait, you're on public comment, Amanda, I can't let you talk. I get to call Elizabeth Bentonhouse. Outlasted her. I get in trouble for that one. I'm sorry. I apologize ahead of time.
We erase that.
All right. So, Amanda, do you wish to speak on this?
Yes, thank you. I was trying to save some paper on putting in the request. Two things really quick. First thing, government's not supposed to be efficient. Part of why the process is set up the way that it is so that we are governed by ourselves in a way, and so that the people who are making the decisions have a chance to hear what we have to say and take that hopefully under advisement in their decision-making process, no matter how long or crazy their comments may be. Frustrating as it is part of the process. The second thing is there's a new report out from the LAO about state mandates and reimbursement for state mandates, including preparation of agendas and minutes for meetings. And the board and staff might be interested in reading that. It just came out about how many agencies in the state are actually taking advantage of that state mandate reimbursement for time preparation for meeting agendas. So I just thought I'd raise those two issues.
Thank you. We have
Staff is completely and very familiar with those mandates, and we file every single solitary time, and we get back the big goose egg. So we're constantly on top of that by the district clerk and the finance manager.
So can I have a motion to accept the committee assignments?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.